my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello, BYWG Tribe. This is Dr. Noah. We wanted to make you aware of our never-before-featured Product of the Month and newly released Book of the Month for April 2018. Keep in mind, all the links, discount codes, and special offers for the product and book will be listed in the show notes in iTunes, in our weekly newsletter, and on our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com at the Listen Now tab. Our product of the month is Mother Dirt. Mother Dirt is a line of biome-friendly personal care products focused on restoring and maintaining the delicate balance of the skin biome. Our book of the month is Breathe, the simple, revolutionary 14-day program to improve your mental and physical health by Dr. Belisa Vranich. Both Jasmina from Mother Dirt and Dr. Belisa Vranich discussing her newest book can be heard on the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast during the month of April.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. I am your co-host today, Dr. Mike Akinfora, and I am thrilled to have with me Or Shahar on the show today. Or, how are you?
I'm doing very good, thank you. How are you?
I am great. I'm going to read her bio, and then we're going to get right into our interview. I'm really excited about this today, as we've not had a lot of folks talking about yoga. So Or Shahar took her first yoga course over 10 years ago during her first trip to India at only 18 years old. At 23, recovering from depression, she took a plane to India again, where she discovered her deep connection to Buddhism, took her first yoga teacher training, and started to practice seriously. For the past 4 years, she's taught yoga in the Berlin area while deepening her own practice every day and spending restorative time raising her beloved dog. On her website, Or helps yoga practitioners who feel like their weekly class is not enough. Her guidance helps practitioners deepen their practice in a way that works with their schedules and their budgets. Or, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. The first question that we ask folks is to tell us your journey.
Yeah, I think I can start with where my bio also starts, with my very first yoga class in India. I was very early to already travel so far. It's mostly thanks to my beloved sister that convinced me and my parents that she should take me on a trip to India. And that kind of started a very long and continuous love story between me and India and everything that came out of India, mostly all of the spiritual traditions that started there. Yeah, so this is where I started, and it also started my yoga practice that kind of went on and off for a few years. I was working. I was unfortunately doing also a military service. And yeah, I had like many people, like you start with, a weekly class, and sometimes you take a few months break and here and there. And actually only when I got to the point when I started to recover from a pretty bad depressive episode, I understood that yoga might be able to offer me more than what I think it can. And I kind of started to understand that yoga can bring more to my life than just, this 1 hour a week of exercise-like practice. And that kind of took me to India again. I think I was around 23 at the time. And I really came very motivated to learn. Like, it was not a trip anymore. I really wanted to learn and to experience and to explore. And I found myself in Dharamsala, and I found a lot of very good teachers there. And this is where my more serious practice started. And it brought me to a lot of places. And a few years after that, when I came to Berlin, it was around almost 6 years ago, actually. I decided that I also want to start to teach full time. So I've done another teacher training additional to the one that I've done already in India, which was a bit short. So I've done a much, much longer one here. And yeah, and this is in a very short way how I came to what I do today.
That's wonderful. Or for people who don't know what yoga is, can you just dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, I would be happy to. Yeah, yoga for me personally, it's a way to live my life. It's a very big box of tools that I have that helps me to deal with life better. And this is my very personal definition. I think nowadays, mostly in the yoga world, I think everybody have their own personal definition of what it is. It's not like the traditional days when the guru said what yoga is and this is what everybody saw. But I think that I know quite a few people that can share this definition. And these tools are, as I said, they are very and many. There are guidelines of how we can behave, how we can treat other people, and how the yogic texts also recommend to us to treat ourselves, which I think it's a very important part of yoga that people don't talk about much. Mm-hmm. But I find it's very, very helpful, these guidelines, and it's very basic on the one hand, but it's not such an easy practice. And what I personally love about it is that everybody can practice it. Like you don't need anything special in order to try to change your behavior and become more aware of your behavior. Like these guidelines are things like, not lying, not harming, not stealing. If it's more about your relationship with yourself. So it's talk about, for example, self-study. This is kind of a few things that comes to my mind right now. And these are all things that everybody can do in any kind of situation. So that's one part of it. Of course, we have the physical exercises, which I don't think I need to talk about much because they are very famous nowadays in the world. We have breathing exercises. We have different stages of meditations that one can practice. As I said, the toolbox is pretty big. And I think it's very good because then everybody can find something in it, whatever your situation is.
Yeah, you're describing a lifestyle as opposed to just a class. Mm-hmm. I think is very, very profound. We as Dr. Noah, Dr. Wandeli, and myself, as chiropractors, we try to teach that, impart that on our patients as well, where we can adjust somebody who's in pain, but it's really the lifestyle, and that's exactly what you're talking about here. Is a lifestyle because, like you said, the physical aspect of the exercise, I do think everybody knows. But when you talk about guidelines of behavior, and the other thing that people don't like talking about, which I think is really important in our lives today, is the spiritual connection that we feel to our community, to ourselves, to our maker, whoever that is. So let's talk about a regular practice, because I think this is super important. How can one keep a regular, stable yoga practice?
I think it has different stages to it. I think the first stage, as I see it in myself and with people that I work with, the first thing that one has to have is a good motivation, a good stable motivation, and a real understanding of why am I doing this, what do I want to achieve in it in the short run, what do I want to achieve in it in the bigger run, in the bigger picture of why people for generations practiced yoga. And I think this already starts also a bit of a spiritual connection, because people traditionally didn't practice yoga in order to achieve more wellness,
Right.
which is nowadays very common and also totally okay. I have absolutely nothing against it. But originally people practiced yoga in order to achieve a certain amount of liberation. And even to the extent of believing this liberation and this inner freedom and inner peace doesn't really have any kind of limits to it. And it's very hard for us as Westerners to believe in it. It sounds very nice, but we have a very few live examples or very few ways to kind of imagine that. But I like to kind of challenge people to, to think about it. And then if you practice and you practice regularly, so all of the wellness side effects will happen naturally. And they can help us also in order to motivate us in something that it's maybe a bit easier to imagine. But I think it's important to have kind of both. And in my first ebook, I call it like dream big. Really dream big and have big goals and have a big why behind what you are doing and behind your practice. And from my personal experience, knowing a lot of yoga practitioners over the more than 10 years that I'm into it, I think that the people that have a very deep motivation and a very strong motivation are the people who really had more success with keeping a regular practice. And people that were doing it only for weight loss, for example, or only because they thought it might be a nice exercise, it's sometimes not really enough in order to keep a regular and deep practice that really brings you everything that yoga can bring to you. So that's kind of the first part of it. And the second part is kind of, it might sound contradictory, but it's to start very small. So I know I have this problem very often that, I know a lot of practices and every time I learn something new, I want to do hours of it a day. And it's not it's not really possible most of the time. It's not very realistic. So what I recommend and also try to remind myself all the time is that something is always better than nothing, and it's better to start small with something that I know that I can keep regularly. And I think it's true for everything you want to do regularly, just to start wherever you are. And like I said before, yoga has such a big variety of practices that if you have a good teacher or if you yourself do a little bit of research, you can always find one or two practices that you can do in any kind of situation. I know that even when I was in really bad situations, I still found some practices that I felt like I'm able to do. So just start where you are and just start. This is always like the third part of my motto: start now, act now. Because we always think, yoga, it sounds really good and I know it's really good for me and I want to achieve this kind of liberation. I want to have a little bit more of inner freedom. I want to try it out. But I'm really busy right now. And we live under the illusion that one day we will be less busy or it will be easier to practice. But unfortunately, we don't know what will happen. And it might become easier with the time. It might not. So as I said, whatever situation you are, you can always start with something. And it's better to start now and build up with time and not to wait or not to think that, better will be, easier later or something. I've now from my experience, this is usually the people who never start.
It's there's so many different ways that we can go with this. For starters, what you said, it is so true. Something is better than nothing. Start now, act now. In our head, and this is what we talk about to our clients and our patients. In our head is perfection. when it comes out into the real world, it never, ever, ever matches what's in our head. But in order to live a fulfilled life, we have to bring that out and basically give birth to that idea and bring it into the world. When we wait for it to be the perfect time, that is the ego's way of keeping us exactly where we are.
Yeah, that's very true.
And when we let go of that, it has the opportunity to basically be even bigger than we thought it was. But we have to get that out of our head and into the land of the living here. So I love that. It is super important. The other thing that you talked about was really a mindset. So talk a little bit more about why that's really important.
What kind of a mindset exactly do you want me to talk more about?
You're talking about dream big and deep motivation. That's absolutely a mindset that most of us did not grow up with.
Yeah, that's very true.
And talk about how, to me, because my partner Noah does yoga, Wanda Lee and her husband do yoga, I do yoga and meditation at home. It opens the channels to bigger thinking. It kind of like clears my mind, whether it's the breathing, whether it's the spiritual, I don't know. So talk to us a little about that.
Yeah, I think beyond really what we said about start small and start now, I think it's worth understanding where yoga comes from. It has a lot of very dramatic changes in the last 70 to 100 years when it kind of came to the West, and also the last days of India, of yoga still being in India. But for many, many years there were no group classes. There was, for many, many years, even nothing like, physical exercises. It was really just a spiritual connection between a guru and a disciple. And the thing just moved orally from a guru to a disciple who became a guru and so forth. And that's very different mindset from what we have today. And it's a very different motivation. Yoga was given only to people who really wanted to learn. And yoga was given only to the people who was kind of like brave enough to do it. Or, one might say more privileged enough. It had a lot of disadvantages. I don't want to kind of glorify the old days in India as if then it was correct and right and perfect. Definitely not a model that fits our days. But I think it's important to understand that it was first like a spiritual tradition, and then it became what it is today. And I think this is why a lot of people naturally feel some kind of a spiritual connection, because all of the exercises that we do, whatever they are designed and they are made with the thought of connecting my mind with my body and connecting my breath with my awareness. And it always have this element of connecting, you can say. Even the word yoga itself means in some kind of way this kind of connection that we are so searching for.
I love that, and I agree with that. I think today, when people talk about the old days, I don't know if they're necessarily better. I think today we are much more spiritual than we've ever been. I don't think there was, like you said, it was it was a yoga, it was 1-to-1 or 1-to-5 where a yogi would have that disciple or a couple of disciples, where today I think we have the ability, I mean, goodness gracious, with the internet we have the ability to connect, like you and I talking today. So that's what's pretty amazing. If you don't mind, I would like to talk about something that very few people talk about, and talk about depression and overcoming depression. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I will be happy to talk about it.
Okay, and this is a very personal experience for you. I understand that, but there's so few people talking about their depression today, and with over 700,000 subscribers, I am sure there are folks out there that you'll be able to help just by sharing your experience. And I think it was the author Brene Brown who talked about the shame that goes with depression. And so, drawing on your personal experience, how can yoga help people suffering from mental illness or instability or depression?
Yeah, I'm actually doing a little bit of a research nowadays into this topic, because I found it personally also more and more interesting, this connection between yoga and depression, also in my own personal life, but also in the life of other people. And you will be surprised to know that a lot of prominent teachers in the yoga world and a lot of practitioners in the yoga world are coming to it because they had depression, and yoga was something that really helped them to overcome it, or to, I like to use more, to be able to deal with it better. This is how I define it to myself. And I think it was possible to me only when, or mostly when, I really saw, as we talk, yoga as a general mindset and yoga as a way of life. Mm-hmm. So it gave me, first of all, some kind of a different frame for what life is and what are my capacities. And it brings us, again, it ties us back to what we just talked about, that from the spiritual point of view of yoga, we are not limited. We have already love inside of us. We have already compassion and wisdom inside of us. And it's infinite. Like, it's not just that we have them, we have also the potential to have them in a limitless way. And for me, as somebody who is suffering from depression, I think you feel very, very limited. And when somebody comes and tells you, these things are inside of you and you can develop them to the point where it's infinite, it was for me personally very intriguing. And I think for many people it was the same. So from the philosophical point of view, I think it kind of makes sense that depression kind of makes you feel very, very, limited. It's one word for it, but also kind of incapable of a lot of things. And yoga just makes more things possible. It makes sense what I mean? Like, you understand what I...
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I think for me, depression often had this phase of hopelessness. And yoga and the practice of yoga just kind of gives you some kind of a window to your own light. It gives you some kind of a window to possibilities that might be inside of you. And I think that for me and for many other people, it just creates this kind of an interest. I have to say, like we talked about it a little before we started to record, that I never would say that yoga cured me from depression. I would never ever use this phrase. And it has different reasons. One, I think that I don't feel 100% cured. depression is still something that I'm dealing with. It's still part of my life. It's probably a part of my personality and will always be. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I learn to accept, and again, with the help of yoga, but with the help of therapy and other things as well. I think that now, after more than 10 years of dealing with it, or almost 10 years of dealing with it, I just have much more tools and much more understanding about what's going on in my psyche in order to deal with it much, much better. So I think it's a big difference between, learning to deal with depression and anxiety, or learning tools that helps you to cope with these situations better, than to say, I'm trying to cure myself or heal myself. Even with the word healing, I sometimes have a problem, because it kind of means that something is sick. And I think the definition of depression, it's some kind of a sickness, and for many reasons, it's a good thing to label it like that. But I think that for many people, it's just a part of their personality, or it's just a part of their life experience. And it's not necessarily a disease or something that is wrong with you that you need to cure or heal or get away from. I think it's something, for many people, I heard many stories, and I can say from my own story, it's a wake-up call. It's an opportunity to go deeper into your own experience of this life, I have my doubts a little bit if it's really a disease, or if it's really something, that we need to try to cure or run away from, or is it something that we can really see as an opportunity? I think it's also not contradictory. It can be both, probably.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of my mentors is John DeMartini from The Secret, and I don't want to take his words out, but there is a silver lining in everything. And so the questions that he asks that I'll answer, and my coach mentored under him, is, so what were the benefits of this? And then what are the drawbacks to this? And you have to list them. And John's been on the show. It's just a fascinating way of looking at things. And this is what you're talking about. When you talk about yoga, there's a connection that you're making, that I feel when you talk about this, that with depression we don't make that connection, but yoga kind of wiggles our way back into that, being grounded and being connected, whether it's, again, to your maker, to your yoga community, to yourself, to your family, that it allows us, there's something beautiful about this that allows us to connect. And what you said in the beginning, it allows us to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And when we have that, and I think you found that sweet spot with this, when we have that depression, we learn to live with it.
Yeah, I think for me personally,
sure,
from my experience, it's mostly about this connection to myself and kind of getting to know myself better, understanding myself better. And I think this is the basic thing that you first need to do in order to feel connected to other people and to community and to your family or whoever is around you. So I think this is, for me personally, the most important connection that I needed to make, because depression, you can see it in a way as kind of disconnecting from yourself. And it usually comes from disconnecting from negative emotions and kind of not wanting to deal with negative emotions. And this is, like I said, I think it's a problem because sometimes depression is kind of just saying that negative emotion is a disease.
Right.
You know, that sadness or fear or things that are actually normal human emotions are some kind of a problem, which of course they are when they become chronic, and of course you should definitely, you know, if you see that it's becoming a hindrance to your daily life, you should definitely go to a doctor, and you should definitely seek professional help. But in the end, these negative emotions just got out of proportion, just got out of balance. But the negative emotion in and of themselves, it's a natural thing that everybody needs to experience in their life. And if you try to suppress them, or if you try to run away from them and kind of distract yourself with other things, it usually just becomes bigger, and sometimes even the source of why it kind of goes out of whack and out of balance, because there is something there who is trying to give you some kind of a message and you're just ignoring it. And I think from my own personal experience, what helped me the most with yoga, it just enabled me to have a safe place where I can just feel and I can just be who I am, even if it's good emotions or it's bad emotions, but I'm able to observe my emotions. I'm able to maybe feel less controlled by my emotions. I have some kind of a safe space to get to know myself and just to be who I am. And I think this is, if you have a good teacher, this is definitely something that yoga can provide you. It can provide you maybe with the medical help that you might need at the moment, but it can definitely give you a safe space to deal with things that you are avoiding for a very long time.
That's brilliant. I love that. So where do you see meditation fitting into all this?
Yeah, meditation is one of the many tools that we have in yoga. Again, it's not something that a lot of people like to talk about, but I think it's very important. I think maybe if you are in a very bad depressive episode right now, meditation might be a very hard thing to do. And I would recommend to consult a teacher and maybe meditate first in a group or something like that. I know that for me, in my very hardcore depression days, meditation, sometimes it's even not a good thing to do, because it's kind of like you have very little between you and your thoughts. And sometimes it's just too much. And if you are not experienced enough to deal with it, it might be even dangerous. But I think that if you are even a bit more stable right now, meditation is actually a very good tool, because as I said, there is not so much interacting between you and your thoughts and what's going on inside of you. We kind of take this very strong spotlight of our attention, and that usually it's kind of everywhere around us and in everybody around us, and we just turn it inside out and we look inside and we just kind of observe without judging, which is a very big part of it, and without trying to control. And yeah, that's just meditation in 2 words. And even without having it to do anything with depression, the basic premises of yoga and of Buddhist philosophy even more is that when you just observe things and you don't judge them and you don't try to control them, then you have a much clearer picture of what happened. And you don't try to run away from certain situations, and you don't try to achieve other situations that might be more comfortable or might appear more more pleasurable. You just try to stay in a state where you can just accept the situation as it is right now, and you just have a much deeper understanding of what is actually to do right now, or what is actually is happening with you right now. And yeah, it goes much deeper, but I think in few words I can sum it up like that.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and I appreciate you sharing that with our audience today. I think it's really important that we get this information out to people, and the tools that are available and that yoga bring. There's not a lot of people talking about this in the world today, so I want to thank you for sharing your experience. I know it's not easy to be vulnerable, but we really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. I think in the end, yoga, as I said, when the philosophers, the old yogic talked about yoga, they talked about liberation from suffering. So I think any kind of suffering that is universal, that we still live today, can be relieved in some way or another through yoga. Because the whole point of yoga is really, as I said, to learn to deal with things and to see them as they are, and to not escape from them or always try to want something else, just to be with the things as they are. And this is in and of itself, it is from the yogic perspective, the way we can release ourselves from suffering, because this wanting to avoid or wanting something else and wanting to be somewhere else, this is many times the biggest suffering that we can create for ourselves.
I agree. I really want to thank you again for being on the show today. Or can you tell people where they can find you in the world?
Yeah, I think the best place to find me is on my website, freedomyoga.info. And there you can find my blog. I write a lot about yoga, about what is bothering me at the moment in the yoga world, or what is going on with me, generally speaking, in my practice. Everything that I learn from my practice, I write and share. So this is what you can find. You can also find my online program there, which I really go step by step, all the different parts of yoga, all of the theory and the philosophy and the how and why behind the practice. You can find there, and yeah, a lot of other stuff as well.
You also have, what's the name of that online program?
The name of the online program is called Become Your Own Teacher.
Perfect.
And a good introductory for that will be my latest ebook, How to Deepen Your Yoga Practice Without winning an Instagram challenge or learning about chakras and things like that. Just a very practical guide to how to deepen your yoga practice.
Wonderful. I will have all of those links in the show notes, and I will make sure that this gets out to folks. Is there any last parting words you have?
Yeah, I wish people just start to practice wherever small it is. Wherever you are right now, I'm sure that there is something that you can start practicing. If you are not so sure, you can just send me an email and I can try to help you to find something that you can at least start with. Like, this is really something I will be happy to offer your listeners. It's one of my biggest pleasures, just to help people start practice.
Wonderful. And like you said, start now, act now. I love that. That is perfect. It's a great mantra.
Definitely.
All right, folks, if you like what you heard today, please do us a favor and go to iTunes and like us and give us a review. You could also do that on our new YouTube channel. You can help others find us so that we can help others as well. So I want to thank Or for being on the show, and we will see you soon. Ciao.
4, get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling